Hello everyone, and welcome to another fragrance review. Thank you so much for watching my videos and tuning into my channel. This time we have a fragrance from the designer house of Moschino, and the fragrance itself is called Moschino Forever. This is a fragrance that goes by two names, either Moschino Forever or just Forever. Now this fragrance was released in 2011. The perfumer for this fragrance is Nathalie Lorson, and Nathalie Lorson is one of those perfumers who tends to take many creative risks with her compositions, and that's something that I always have a fond appreciation for. She's also notable for compositions like Mandarina Duck's Pure Black, which also goes by the name of Black, and also Encre Noir by Lalique. So that's just to give you a little bit of the history behind the fragrances that she has composed. Hopefully you're familiar with one of them. Now this fragrance, on the other hand, released in 2011, is the most recent men's release from the company. The company itself was actually established back in 1983 when the Italian founder Franco Moschino had an idea. He was actually a clothing critic himself. He opened up the company in 1983 as a clothing company. So they made men's, women's, and children's clothing. And then eventually they branched out into fragrances in 1987. 87 is when they released their first fragrance, which was a woman's release, and it went by a self-titled name. 3 years after that, in 1990, they released their first men's fragrance, also called Moschino Pour Homme, self-titled. And in 2011 is when this fragrance was released. However, I can't say that Franco Moschino had anything to do with this fragrance. Now the late Franco Moschino, he passed away in 1994, and who was previously his assistant, I believe her name is Rosella Giardini. She now took over the company in 1994, and she's now the creative director. So this fragrance was released under her direction. So a lot of the more recent things that have happened within the company have been done under her direction. Now the company has been out for a while in terms of their clothing. They have made clothing, I should say, for the 2008 Winter Olympics. They also made, I think, Madonna's wardrobe for one of her tours. I may be wrong on that one, but they've been around as far as their marketing and their involvement in the fashion industry is concerned. And I just believe that they branched out into fragrances just to make a little bit extra money. But they've been quite successful, considering that I believe they now have 16 fragrances in their inventory, and the ratio of men's to women's fragrances is 1 to 3. And I guess the only reason for that, or the logical conclusion as to why that is probably because they tend to market more women's clothing, so comparably there would be more women shopping at their establishments, therefore they would buy more women's fragrances than men's. But that's just one assumption that I've made. This fragrance, on the other hand, as you could tell, goes by the name of Forever. The reason for that is just like their clothing, they want to release products that are fun, they're contemporary, but they're also timeless. And I think this fragrance does aim to do that. The only thing is I have one subtle qualm with this fragrance, which isn't really a big deal. It's just a personal association that I've made. When I first smelled this fragrance, and I won't go too in depth about how it smells now, but when I first smelled this fragrance, it immediately reminded me of one of my closest friends. Now, this friend that I'm referring to only ever wore two fragrances, Davidoff's Cool Water and Curb by Liz Claiborne. And once you smell this fragrance, it's no question that it smells nothing like Davidoff's Cool Water. And then that's when I made the logical deduction that it was actually Liz Claiborne Curve that this fragrance reminded me of, because it reminded me so much of my friend. However, please take that with a grain of salt. And with that being said, I don't mean to mislead or misinform anyone into thinking that the two fragrances smell similar, because they absolutely don't. But, however, I do think they are in the same genre. I think they both have this fruity overtone and a complexity in the background. Now, I will get a little bit more in detail about what I think or what I mean about that, but next up we have the presentation for Moschino Forever by Moschino. Here we have the presentation for Moschino Forever by Moschino. First up we have the box, and the first thing that you're going to notice is this very high luster embossed finish up here at the top with the name of the fragrance and the company, so Moschino Forever. Actually beautiful, very well done. Over here at the cardboard, it's very hard to tell, but it's not your standard cardboard paper cardstock box. This is actually like a velvety, almost rubbery material. It's very hard to describe, but if you feel it, you would know exactly what I mean. So it's not, again, it's not your standard or traditional box. This one actually does something different, and I like that about it. Down here we have some more information like the concentration and the size. Nothing going on at the sides. At the top we have the name of the company, also in that embossed finish. And down here at the very bottom we have the serial number engraved in the upper right hand corner, as well as the UPC code dead smack in the middle. That's really all that goes as far as the box is concerned. I think the highlight of the presentation is, of course, as with many fragrances, the bottle. Over here we're going to have this beautiful Moschino named up here, serving as the cap of this fragrance. Very well done, as a matter of fact. It actually looks like aluminum. It's actually plastic. That might be my only qualm. Other than that, it actually clicks into place very securely, and I feel very comfortable lifting this fragrance from the cap itself with no fear of it coming apart, so well done on that behalf. Over here in the front, you're going to get the name of the company and the fragrance itself, Moschino Forever. Down at the bottom, you have a serial number that matches with the one on the box. It's on a sticker. Nothing going on at the back, but it's a very thick and sturdy glass, as you can probably tell. The atomizer actually works incredibly well. Nice, thick, even burst over there. And that's really it as far as the fragrance goes. Again, not the best atomizer in the game, but it gets the job done. And that was the presentation for Forever by Moschino. Okay, now as far as the smell for this fragrance goes, I'm just going to reapply it on my hand just to remind myself of what the initial spray of this fragrance smells like. And once again, we have a beautiful atomizer there working in that fragrance. Upon initial spray, and I could already smell it, I don't even have to bring my hand too close to my nose, you're going to get this blast of citrus in the opening. Now, it's not your conventional, traditional, generic citrus that you're used to in smelling in a lot of other designer releases. This is the one thing that I love about Nathalie Lorson, is that she can take the ingredients that are limited to her use, and she could create a fragrance that's designer or niche quality, but it's marketed as a designer fragrance. And I don't mean niche in terms of price or in terms of the way that it smells, although I do think this one smells a little manufactured, because I hate to use the word synthetic. I think it has a complexity to it that's actually really nice, and the notes are not very discernible. But the reason I call it niche quality is because it takes creative risks, and it's different. It stands out from the rest or other fragrances within its genre that it could potentially be competing against. And that's one thing that I really do like about this fragrance. First thing you're going to smell once you spray it is this very bright bergamot note. Very fresh, very citrusy when you first smell it, and it's nice. It's a smell that no one's going to complain about. I think it's a compliment getter for sure. I think it is a crowd pleaser. I don't think, although I say this is a compliment getter, I don't think people are going to go head over heels for this fragrance. Again, it depends on how you carry yourself and whatnot. But it does smell inoffensive, and I think that's great about this fragrance. One of the reasons why I love wearing this fragrance, and I wear it so comfortably, despite the winter conditions. I think it's very versatile. However, in terms of social scenarios, I think this is more of a night out fragrance than a casual wear fragrance. But I mean, I assume if you like the fragrance so much, you could wear it whenever you want, and I would highly encourage you to. Aside from the bergamot note, I do think that there is this very bright, very dominant kumquat note. Now that's the reason why this fragrance stands out as much as it does. Kumquat is a note that's harvested in China. It actually translates into something orange. Please forgive me, but I'm forgetting the adjective right now. And the rind, from what I've read, the rind of the fruit is sweet, whereas the pulp or the fiber of the fruit is sour, because it is a citrus fruit and it's a type of orange. So you could imagine it to smell somewhat similar to other releases that you've smelled in department stores, but not entirely similar. And that's what I like about this. And I think that satisfies the name of the fragrance in terms of it having this timeless appeal. Now, with that being said, I think it's just that chronological inconsistency between the personal association that I have and the presentation of the actual fragrance that tends to turn me off, just because it reminds me of my friend, and those are 90s powerhouse fragrances which don't smell dated, but not all that contemporary. So just a personal qualm that I have there, not saying anything negative about the fragrance. The kumquat note, and it only takes a few minutes for the bergamot note to entirely dissipate and evaporate and disappear, but the kumquat note has this depth to it. It's not light, it's not transparent. It's like this very juicy, citrusy, mildly sweet and tart citrus note that you're going to get in the introduction of this fragrance that I think smells very appealing. I think it would spark people's curiosity into wanting to get closer and smelling this fragrance from a closer distance, just because it's so intriguing. And I like that about this fragrance, is that this is a designer release and it's sure to catch somebody off guard in terms of how it smells. There's also a little bit of pepper that you're going to get in the opening, which I think takes this fragrance and puts it more of a masculine category. It's not overwhelming to the point where it's going to make you want to sneeze or anything, but I think it works in there very nice to give it just that little masculine edge. Thus not making it entirely unisex, but I could see a comfortable woman wearing this fragrance. Aside from the kumquat note, it does contain a little bit of vetiver. I am going to admit that I do not smell a lot of it, maybe because I'm used to like that earthy, grassy, you know, herbal, moist type of vetiver that you would get in other fragrances like Mugler Cologne and Original Vetiver by Creed. However, this one does not smell too earthy to me. More fruity and more sweet than anything. Aside from the pepper, there's a little bit of tonka bean in the background that I picked up immediately. And I think the reason for that is because the perfumer has used tonka bean in her other fragrances, and as soon as I sprayed it, the background of this fragrance reminded me a lot of Pure Black by Mandarina Duck. I think the tonka bean note that you're going to get in Mandarina Duck is the same one that you're going to get in this fragrance. However, because of the overtones and all of the other smells that you're going to get from this fragrance before you pick up on that tonka bean, do not necessarily put those two in the same genre. I think the tonka bean that you're going to get in Mandarina Duck is more nutty, it's more gourmandish, and much sweeter and much smoother, I think. This one is sharp because of this star anise note that you're going to get in the opening. With that being said, I don't want anybody to think that this is going to smell like an Eau Masculin by Lolita Lempicka or like a Body Kuros. Although now that I think about it, I'm not entirely sure that Body Kuros contains star anise. But it's not like that sweet, spicy, you know, licorice type of a vibe that you're going to get from those fragrances, I should say. This one, it's sweet, but it's not too spicy. The majority of the spiciness that you're going to get is from the black pepper. But aside from that, there are a few other notes in this composition. I don't think they're too worthy of a mention because they're not that strong or that concentrated as far as my opinion is concerned. But the notes that do lay beneath the kumquat note are fairly evenly balanced. And that's the reason why I say this fragrance has some complexity to it. Because complexity is primarily attributed to different notes being evenly concentrated, which makes it hard to distinguish one from the other, or utilizing different notes that smell the same. Which is why when I first smelled this fragrance, being that it does contain both a kumquat and a bergamot, I didn't pick up the bergamot right away until I kept respraying and respraying, and eventually I realized that there was something else going on in the introduction. It's one of those fragrances where, as a whole, you get one unique smell, but underneath there is this hidden complexity or this complex undertone to it. As opposed to other fragrances like, say, something from the House of Creed, where you can smell it and you can just visually create a picture of every note that you smell in that fragrance and the fruit and what it looks like. You don't really get that from this fragrance, but keep in mind that the star player of this fragrance is that fruity, sweet, and mildly spicy opening with a little bit of pepper and the mildest earthy undertone. With that being said, that was the smell for Moschino Forever. Next up we have the rating. Thank you for watching. Here we have the rating for Moschino Forever, and first up we have uniqueness and overall smell, and I ended up giving this fragrance a 7 out of 10. I think it's different enough that it warrants a purchase if you're tired of, I think, not Acqua di Gio, but Le Male and Paco Rabanne's 1 Million and these gourmandish fragrances that people usually wear to like clubs and parties and bars and other types of scenes and social scenarios such as those. If you're looking for something different and you want to stand out, I think this is an excellent fragrance fitting within that category that really could be a potential contender to those fragrances just because it stands out and it smells quite similar without smelling identical. It's in that same vein. So with that being said, the smell is very unique, it's different, it's not something that I've encountered before in another fragrance, so I ended up giving it a 7 out of 10. Next up we have longevity, and I also gave this fragrance a 7 out of 10. On my skin, it lasts 6 to 8 hours. I have worn this in 40-degree weather as well as 70 to 75-degree weather. It performs the same on my skin. in both conditions, so the average is 7 hours. I ended up giving it a 7 out of 10. Projection, this fragrance actually projects very well. What I did when I assessed the projection for this fragrance is I sprayed it on the back of my hand and that was it. And I extended my arm and I was able to smell it for the first hour or so. At about the 2.5 hour mark, I put my hand right below my chest and I was still able to smell this fragrance. And that lasted well into the 3 hour mark. Once you have to bring it a few inches away from your nose, I don't count it as projecting. So I would say it projects very well for about 3 to 3.5 hours, and I think that's average to above average for this fragrance. So the performance is there and very well done from this fragrance. Next up we have Versatility. I ended up giving this fragrance a 7 out of 10 again. The reason for that is because it does have this mild, very mild vetiver note, and the black pepper that really puts it more of like a spicy, peppery, masculine category. So I do think this one is geared more toward the masculine crowd, and of course it's marketed for men, but I do think a comfortable woman would be able to pull this off flawlessly. So again, to each his own, or in this case her own. But in terms of social occasions, I think, like I said, this is more of a night out fragrance. Casual wear, night out. If you're looking for something to wear at a bar, at a club, a party, you don't want to wear Le Male or 1 Million, this is an amazing alternative. I'm actually surprised that not more people have gotten their nose on this or haven't, really investigated into this fragrance, because I think it's nice enough to warrant a purchase, and it would be excellent for those types of occasions. I wouldn't wear this in a suit and tie, semi-formal or formal occasion, just because there are other fragrances in my collection that I would possibly reach for, but in terms of casual wear and night out, this is perfect. Now, in terms of weather, I do think this is a 4 seasons fragrance. You can wear it whenever you want. I think the black pepper is slightly in the spicy overtones, like the star anise, is slightly evocative of more autumnal weather, whereas that citrus and fruity opening is something that you think you'd wear in the hotter weather. So I think in terms of the personal evocation, it works in all 4 seasons. And again, not totally unisex, geared a little bit toward the masculine crowd in my personal opinion. Last up we have the presentation. Told you what I thought about that. Very nice from the bottle to the box. I ended up giving it a 9 out of 10. Atomizer works incredibly well. Not necessarily the best in the game, but for that reason alone, I couldn't give it a perfect mark, and that brings this fragrance to an overall or average score of 7.4 out of 10. So there you have it. That was my review of Moschino Forever by Moschino. Thank you all so much for watching. Please don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated. If you feel compelled to do so, please join my Facebook group for future giveaways. I will leave a link in the description section below. Again, this has been Steven with another fragrance review from Redolessence. Thanks for watching.